Welcome to Queerly Speaking. I'm your host, Nat Jones, and together my wife and I will navigate the complex intersections of faith, identity, love, and resilience. In each episode, we'll share stories of heartbreak, healing, and hope from individuals who were told they didn't belong in the very spaces that shaped us. Welcome back to Queerly Speaking. Sorry about last week. Crazy week.
Did you miss us? Because we missed you.
We did. But we didn't miss each other.
Okay.
So we have this week my name, Nat Jones. You guys know me, and my beautiful co-host, Tammy, also my wife, life partner, baby mama in the future to come. And also my sister, Anna, also beautiful. Thank you for joining us again. Your episode was very popular. You are very smart, and we're happy to have you back today.
We'll see if that holds true today.
We could use some of that on this podcast.
Yeah, we really could. I'm just kidding. You provide so much.
Thank you, honey.
You're welcome.
So do you. So do you.
Yeah, thanks. Here I have the privilege of sitting in front of two beautiful bisexual women, one of whom I am married to, one of whom I am
not married to,
and also I was going to say blood related to. And I thought that it would be a very interesting topic to talk to them both, with them both here together, about what it means to be bisexual. I think especially if you're in the straight heterosexual community, it can be a little confusing. There's actually probably many things that can be confusing, but I thought it would be actually very educational to talk to them about what it means to be bisexual and kind of unravel what that looks like in the day-to-day lives of you.
I think it's also can be confusing for people in the community because like we're all so different and varied, and there's all these definitions and ways of thinking about sexuality that I think it's cool just to talk about, at least mine, your understanding of what bisexuality is, and that may be different for other people, but that's what rings true for us.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree.
Exactly. So why don't we start with what does it mean to be bisexual?
Anna?
For me personally, it means I am attracted to men and women. I think there's this whole spectrum in between there that's like, do you have preferences, or does it like straight 50-50 of like really doesn't matter as long as you're vibing with the person? And then there's preferences of like tend to prefer men or prefer women, or tend to prefer masculine women and more feminine men, or masculine men and masculine women. Like there's this whole gamut of preference that can happen with it under that umbrella of bisexuality. At least for me, from my understanding.
Yeah, I would agree. How do you feel? Should we just get right onto it? When people think it's a gateway drug, I feel like we should discuss that.
Yeah, there's a couple of myths I want to bust.
Oh yeah, did I skip ahead?
No, but that's one of them. That it's a gateway situation.
That's true. I think people always assume that like you're either straight and then you're just like trying to get men's attention by being with them, or that you're actually a lesbian and it's just like compulsive heterosexuality that's like kind of keeping you liking men, and that there's not a true in between those two things, which is bisexuality.
Isn't it true in some circumstances, like if we're all honest, that sometimes when people come out or they're kind of moving their way towards coming out, it is a bit easier to start with bisexuality because it's more accepted, because this is just speaking in generalities. A lot of times when women are bisexual, they tend to be more feminine presenting, and it's more accepting by society. It's not always the case, but I do think it's used that way, which adds to the confusion sometimes.
Well, I think, if I may, that I don't think that I feel like it's more accepted to be bi. I actually feel like it's not. I feel like you kind of get a lot of pushback for that. I do think being feminine, like me,
Straight
myself
presenting.
personally, being, straight presenting and like really feminine and all that stuff is much more palatable to the average person, which is obviously problematic, but I don't know that I feel like it is, because I feel like you're kind of like in the in-between of, like not having the experience that you had growing up always being gay, right? Like I wasn't, in turmoil with, whatever, all those things, but then it's a little bit different. But I also think going back to, and again, I can obviously only speak from my personal experience with this, so Anne, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say as well. But I do think it's a little bit more palatable to say that, because like I remember having a thought in my head, which we've talked about tons on the podcast. I wasn't really expecting adversity but I think you always kind of are in the back of your mind. Like there is some level of you're like, well, I'm pretty sure everyone's going to be okay, but like just in case, like if they're not, you know, and again, that was like 90, they're going to be okay, and 10% cause for concern for me, which is very fortunate. It is like, okay, once you come to terms with being bisexual, or at least I did, it's like, well, but if I end up with a man, we still don't really have to cross this bridge, you know? But I do think, you know, again, for me personally, my experience, it's like, okay, you kind of come to terms with being bisexual, and then you're like, well, if I'm going to end up with a man, I'm never going to have to cross this bridge with anyone who might care. It's fine. Like it could be, you know, something internal. I think in terms of that being like a gateway, it's more, I don't know, just for people's own personal comfort. And sometimes like you don't even realize, like I'm sure we're going to talk about this later, so I don't want to skip ahead, but also like your preferences can change. Like we've talked a ton on the podcast about realizing you're bisexual. Again, at least for me, and I think you said this as well, is like often something that comes later in life because you're not, you know, like I was dating guys and it was fine. So it was like, okay, whatever, like not really thinking about it. So then you're like, okay, you see like one woman, you're like, okay, so then it's probably like 95-5, you know, so you're like, I've seen 150 guys I think are hot and one girl. And then you're like, oh, now I'm looking more and I'm seeing more, you know, so that changes. And I think that's totally normal.
Well, and I think there's also the idea of like it being a gateway into the queer community. I think that is kind of twofold. So like I think bisexuality is more palatable to the straight community. On the other hand, I think it's actually much less palatable to the queer community.
Yes, totally.
I would 150% agree with that.
Yeah. So for like the straight community, it is definitely, I think, more palatable because like you have options. So like you could pick the normal one, quote unquote. I think it's easier for people to start getting curious about their sexuality. And it's kind of like a bridge into like, okay, I'm just going to like dip my toes into this and see how this feels. But so this is my hot take. I think that the reason people get confused with bisexuality being a gateway is because I think that, like I said, like it's easier to kind of figure out and get curious and like, maybe I'm bi, and then like you eventually realize like you're lesbian. But I think that it's not a gateway in that people who ultimately realize like they're lesbian, or for men that they're gay, they were never actually bisexual in the first place.
Yeah,
So
no,
it was
I agree.
Really, yeah, so it was like never really a gateway as far as like bisexuals either eventually will turn lesbian or eventually will turn back to straight. And I think that's what a lot of communities think in the queer community and the straight community is that every bisexual is just doing it for attention and one day they'll actually figure out what they like.
I think the clarification on that's really important, that it's not a gateway. It's that you were never bisexual to begin with. But we use some of that language to ease ourselves into.
Yes.
And when you know better, you just do better, right? Like sometimes like you probably just don't know, and that's okay. Like I don't understand why it's so like, that is kind of one complaint that I feel like towards our own community. Like we're very like, oh, it has to be this, or like yesterday you were this. And it's like, what? Who the fuck cares? First of all,
Let's just figure it out as we go.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think, and you mentioned this a second ago, and I do want to kind of go back there. And babe, actually, you should chime in on this because you had some of this as well while you were trying to, you know, I don't know what to say, really, like fight your true identity when you were younger. But like comp het, you know, is like hard for us because, or for the bisexual community, because again, you're like, yeah, well, society is telling me that I should be with a man and doing all these things. And you're like, well, I am dating them, and like, I guess it's fine, you know, like I'm not really looking back on my time dating guys, some of them, and wanting to vomit, but that's not really a reflection on men so much as my own personal choices to take accountability for, but you know what also I mean? Men. So you're like, yeah, well, sometimes, but so you're like, okay, well, I guess it's going fine. Like, why would I rock the boat, you know, when I could continue to do this thing that's so much easier for people, you know? I think that is really challenging to bisexuals in general.
Well, and I think the confusing thing about like compulsive heterosexuality, I think applies a little bit more to women who are actually gay or lesbian, because I think the challenging thing about being bisexual and figuring that out is that you do genuinely like and are attracted to men. So I think when you have like a genuine attraction to men, and on the other hand, society is telling you, yeah, do you have a boyfriend yet at 3 years old? And it's like from the start, the standard or like the norm is to be straight. And so when you're genuinely attracted to men, it makes it hard to actually realize like, this is not just like a girl crush. This is more than just these like superficial feelings towards women. But I think it can be really hard to figure that out, or at least it was for me, because I did and still am genuinely attracted to men, as well as being genuinely attracted to women.
But I think that that's a really good point, because you see that in society now. A really good example is JoJo Siwa. Has been dating girls, got a lot of flack for it. Now she's dating a guy, and it's like, oh my God, they're so cute. She's getting a lot of positive attention. And that sucks, because it teaches little girls and little boys, teenagers, whatever, what is going to be celebrated.
Well, and then there's also celebrated by the straight community, right? And then there's also from the queer community of, well, you were never bisexual in the first place. It was just for attention. You were only dating women for attention because like you're really attracted to men, and now you're just going back to your roots.
For sure. Well, and then I know in the queer community, right, speaking from someone who is gay, there tends to be a lot of distrust coming from someone who's fully gay, looking at a bisexual person. I've had many, many friends who are like, oh, they're bisexual? No, I will not date them. I will only date someone who's gay, because they feel like they've either had a bad experience, which obviously leads to trauma and hurt, and then you now have trust issues, which I mean, is valid. And then also life, right? Yeah. You could apply the trauma trust thing to almost every situation that happens. But I think because you're looking at it, like you've already fought to be who you are, you have fought to have the life that you have. So then to take a chance on someone who not only likes women, but also likes men. And it can feel a little bit unsafe. And I may get a lot of flack for this on the podcast, I don't know, but it can feel unsafe because society in general is telling all of us that you're going to be better off with a relationship that is one woman and one man and a heterosexual. Everything is geared towards heterosexuals. It is celebrated. It's a harder path to be gay or bisexual, be bisexual and be in a same-sex relationship. Yeah. And so I think even that plays a big part of it, I think, in the queer community, is it's like, well, for me, for just as a quick example, when I say one of my best friends is a guy, you're like, cool. I could go do anything with them. Yeah, I could be on a sleepover. I could do a camping trip and everyone would be like, cool. But for someone who's bisexual, because obviously everyone, like, there's no worry or attraction or anything like that for me, right? But for someone who is bisexual, I'm not saying, I do not actually think this way. I'm just speaking on behalf of other stories. It is a common thread amongst people that then it's like, well, but you like men and women. So where are we safest in that scenario?
Yeah, I think that is one of the major myths that comes with bisexuality, is that they're more likely to cheat.
Yeah.
Because if you're with a man, are you more likely to cheat with a woman because the man can't give you what a woman can, and vice versa? That's a conversation I've had like many times with people and like friends and people just like curious about what bisexuality is. The way I like to describe it is when I'm in a committed relationship, whether that be with a man or a woman, is I'm in a committed monogamous relationship because that's what I've chosen to do. So to me, being attracted to men or being attracted to women is just, they're all the same essentially to me. I'm attracted to both. So if I'm friends with a woman outside of my committed relationship, there's no risk of me cheating because I'm not going to do that. I respect my relationship. And if I'm friends with a guy while in a same-sex relationship, it's the same thing to me. There's not a risk of me cheating because I value and respect my monogamous committed relationship. But I think people get this idea in their head that, well, if you like dick, then you're going to try to get that because you can't get that from a woman. So yeah, I think that people are always assuming that someone who's bisexual is going to cheat because you're either with a woman and you're looking for dick, or you're with a man and you're looking for tits, maybe. Huh?
True.
I just want to say that my wandering eye is a medical condition and not a reflection of my loyalty.
Oh my God.
That's an unfair stereotype for me.
Jeez, babe. That's hilarious, actually. Myth 2 is that if you're bisexual, you're prone to cheat. For me, myth number 3 that we're going to bust is if you're bisexual and you're with a man, you are missing something. And if you are bisexual and you're with a woman, then you're missing something. I've really grown a lot and learned a lot because first long-term relationship I was with, and she was bisexual, and she would explain, oh no, you don't miss it. Just because I was with dick before doesn't mean I miss it. Well, who'd she cheat with? A dick. But I think it's important to bring this up because it's really, really more important the character of someone, just like the character of a heterosexual person or the character of a gay person or whatever. It's not things that can be combined. And that's what I don't like sometimes about like these generalities that are made about different people and different types in the community, is that that's how it works. It's like, no, that just means you have shitty character,
right?
In my personal opinion, if you cheat and you're not in a relationship where that is like
an ethical phenomenon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. That's what I'm saying. But thank you for that's perfect. So let's talk about that a little bit, because babe, I think you should talk about that a little bit, because you, I think, do a good job of this. And then I think that can lead us into more the preferences, because you differ in that way a little bit.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you and I obviously had a lot of talks about this at the beginning, and everyone's situation is unique. And I think, especially for us, like you were the first woman I've been with in every capacity.
Which in the gay community, they'd say, no, 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 don't you marry her.
And pretty quick, right? Like there was not that much time between me really being like, okay, I'm comfortable with being bisexual, I'm dating women, and then I met you and bing, bang, boom, like we're, married now. But so we talked about that a lot, right? Because there are other things where you're like, this is what I'm used to. I'm used to being with men, or I'm used to doing this, like this dynamic. Am I going to miss that? And I'm like, no, haven't wanted for anything yet. Good job, honey. But you know what I mean? Like I really do think you covered it. It's like if you're someone who's faithful, you're not looking around, and you're looking for, in realizing that you're bisexual later in life. Like prior to that, even I had done all the work to know what I'm looking for in a person. The only difference really is that now I am comfortable saying that person could be a woman. Like that's the only difference for me, Of course, like the first time I kissed a girl, I'm like shitting myself. Going to
terrifying.
Right? And you're like, who's going to plan the date? And I'm like thinking it's going to be me. I'm like, okay, it's not going to be me. But I did try that. I'm like, this is not for me. Whatever. You're just trying to kind of find your way. And then even at the beginning of our relationship, not to overshare, but there are some learning curves, obviously. You're doing things for the first time. But that's really like, that's it. Like, but that's the same with any new partner, really. Like if you're... heterosexual, you're anything. Like when you're with a new partner, you're learning them in different ways. Like, I don't know, it's not, but you're not thinking, hopefully, like again, even if you're straight, hopefully you're not thinking with your next husband, like your next, boyfriend or whatever. You're not thinking about your previous boyfriend's wiener. You know what I mean? But like you would never say, like that's another thing where I feel like you would never say that to like a straight person. You'd be like, oh, but do you miss Jason's dick now? Like you would never say that.
Never.
So it's like, why are you saying that to someone else? They're like, oh, but do you miss it? I'm
Don't
like, no, I don't miss the chest hair in my mouth. Thank you.
Oh, why is it in your mouth?
I'm having a cuddle. That's a little wire.
And some people like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not in your mouth.
Some people do. And that's okay. I'm so not into chest hair. Like a man, maybe, but shave your chest. Is that a hot take? No offense to the hairy chested community, obviously.
That speaks to preferences.
Yeah, that's going to preferences. But I think you did good, babe, just going back to give yourself a little credit. Like because I remember at the beginning you even shared with me, you're like, oh, some of my friends like would not be comfortable. Like they would never date, a bisexual person. I'm like, okay, cool. How do you feel about that? We're doing it. Trust comes from both ends. And you obviously had been burned before, so it's totally understandable that you would come with a little apprehension. But I'm also coming with apprehension of like, this is my first rodeo. Like, I don't know what, in any new relationship, you don't really know what you're doing. I feel like you're just kind of figuring it out. As long as you're willing to do that together.
Yeah. Well, I think also it's like, I have typically found myself in that situation because not that gay people are not feminine presenting. It's just when I would be really attracted to someone, they were always more feminine presenting. I like a girly girl. And so it just happened to be that way. It's not, I was like looking for a list of people who are bisexual. It just happened to be that way sometimes. But it was like, what am I going to do once I found out that you were bisexual? Like, be like, I'm sorry, you were very hot, but I'm no longer going to be able to speak with you. Like,
I love how you look, your character, your personality, your sense of humor, except that your sexuality just doesn't do it for me.
I know, just can't
like, who's going to say that?
I know.
No. But people did ask me, like my friends did ask, does that not worry you? They're like, what worries me is just liars in general.
Yeah, right. Liars and cheaters. Straight, gay, or bisexual.
Yeah, exactly. I think in our situation, and I think many people could, I see this all over TikTok, but I think it would be more like my lack of experience. That would have been more of not a red flag is obviously extreme to say, but a, cause for pause of concern maybe. I'm like, oh, she doesn't have that much experience, like dating women. What if she's like not really into it? But I think again, you're just open and honest. Like I said that to you, right? At the beginning, we talked about like, oh, I just realized I'm bisexual. I don't really remember how long it had been by that time, but and I've done this and whatever. we just had, again, that foundation of trust. You know, I'm letting you know. I don't feel like it's a question mark. Like, I feel pretty like I'm 10 toes down on this, but you deserve to know where my experience level is at, and then you can choose if you want to go on a date and you want to pursue me or not.
And I think, honestly, that boils down to just communication in any type of relationship. Yeah. Like, open vulnerability, communication from the start of like what you're looking for, where you're at, and even the things that you don't know about yourself at this point or don't have a full understanding of. It's just having that communication in any type of relationship is what is actually most important.
Yeah. I agree. So thanks for sharing, honey bun.
Of course.
You're right. I mean, from day one, you're just a trustworthy little bunny.
Thank you.
You know, you just really are. So, Anna, let's talk about you. You have ventured and journeyed in your life through treacherous waters of dicks and vaginas. So what is that like for you?
So yeah, I obviously started with like dating and seeing men and that sort of thing, because that was definitely easier to figure out.
And you liked it.
Yeah, I liked it. Like, it had genuine attraction.
And I only say that because sometimes she talks about it and she's like, it doesn't sound like she liked it. So I want to be real clear.
Let's not skip ahead to the story, babe.
I want to be real clear. You like it.
I liked it.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think we talked about this a little bit the last time I was on the podcast, of this idea of like, growing up, for me at least, it was like you're straight or you're gay, and there's nothing in between. I had no vocabulary for what I was feeling. And so it was really easy to be like, oh, well, I am attracted to guys or boys at the time. And so that was easy to figure out. And then it was much harder to figure out that I was also attracted to women, because I didn't have any language for bisexuality at the time. So it actually took me a while to realize that that is who I am. And so I definitely dated a lot more guys over the years, and then kind of ventured into the ladies and ended up getting...
ventured into the ladies, you get it.
I ventured into vagina. And actually met and fell in love with and married a woman. We're unfortunately divorced now, but that's regardless of sexuality. But at the end of the day, I am like fully 100% attracted to men, and I'm fully 100% attracted to women. For me, though, there is actually a somewhat of a preference there. And when I say preference, I don't mean like that I prefer or would rather be with a man. It's not a I would rather be with one or the other. When I say preference, I'm talking about I guess
it's almost like probability, like the likelihood I'm going to find someone attractive.
The likelihood of me finding a man attractive versus finding a woman attractive, which is a kind of interesting thing, because I actually think that in general, women are much more attractive than men. I think that women are beautiful.
I think most people would agree with you.
Yeah, I think women, truthfully, women are beautiful. But as far as who I am like attracted to in a like deeper level, I'm more likely to be attracted to a man. And so that's what I mean by when I say preferences. It's not that I would rather be with a man than a woman. I just have a tendency towards being attracted to men than I do to women. But again, doesn't take away from me fully 100% being attracted to men and women.
All right, well then let me ask you a question, and you're going to have to answer this honestly, because there are people out here who really need to know. Okay.
The people are.
So you're in a relationship and you're deeply unhappy.
In a hypothetical situation.
And you're with, say, a man.
Okay.
In an unhappy relationship. You're already typically in an unhappy place. Your mind internally, nothing else, but your mind internally could be wandering off. Does it wander off with the opposite sex?
It wanders off with whoever I'm attracted to at the moment. I think it's not really wandering. It's this idea of, even when you're in a committed monogamous relationship, like you're not blind anymore. Like you don't not see people anymore and find people attractive.
Except you're fucking blind.
Blind is bad. But like you meet people and you encounter people and like you would never do anything with that, or you don't even entertain the thought, but you still can recognize that you're attracted to someone. Yeah. I mean, I think to not do that is more dangerous, but you can recognize that you are attracted to someone and them not be your partner. And for me, that was the same of whether I'm in a relationship or not. I'm still attracted to men. I'm still attracted to women. And if I'm in a unhappy relationship, and if my mind were to wander, it's not about wanting the opposite of what I have, you know? And I think that's where people get really hung up on this idea of, well, if you're with men, you're going to cheat with a man, or if you're with a man, you're going to cheat with a woman. But I don't think that's actually true. I think it's just if you're a cheater, you're going to cheat. And it doesn't actually matter if you're bisexual or not. It's your character that is flawed.
For sure. No, for sure. Oh, I think that's really important to note because I do think people have a really hard time. And no matter how many times you tell them it's not the case, I think when people think about bisexual, they're like,
you're always going to be wanting
you're always going to be wanting the other.
But it's like, it doesn't even make sense because you're like thinking, okay, you're a lesbian, full lesbian. That means you're attracted to, I mean, not every woman, obviously, but that would be like me being like, well, she's happy with me, but she's always thinking there are probably bigger tits out there. It's like, there definitely are a double A cup, but I don't think you're thinking about that night and day. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, again, with just the things that I feel like, I mean, whatever, this is like another soapbox for another episode, but that people aren't comfortable saying when they should not be. Like, you would never think, well, I bet you're thinking, could be a bigger dick than what you currently have. It's like, there probably could be. Like, you're not thinking about that if you're in a happy relationship.
Well, and straight people don't say those things to each other.
That's what I'm saying, right.
There's a lot of things that straight people say to gay people that they would never consider talking to each other. Like,
but even in our own community, like we've talked about, people say this to other bi people, and it's like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, I think that is the really tough hang up about being bisexual is it's so kind of acceptable in the straight community because it's more palatable, but in the gay community or the queer community, it's so much less acceptable because there are so much myths and there are a lot of trauma in the past, I'm sure, from people who didn't know themselves well and hurt other people for it. But it's kind of a weird position to be in because you feel like you kind of don't really fit in either community.
Yeah, I get that.
From both communities.
Well,
saying things to you.
And not to diminish either one of your experiences because it's obviously extremely valuable and very important. But I feel bad for men who are bisexual.
Oh, yeah.
And they have it much worse, in my opinion.
I agree.
They really, really do. Talk about toxic masculinity that straight men already deal with. But then you're a bisexual man. You have all of the normal things going on that's like battling against you as a man. And then you have women who are also looking at you, not understanding and not also accepting. I think it is much, 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 much more common for a man to look at a woman and be like, you're bisexual? That's kind of hot.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, there's not a lot of women who I have spoken to or heard of that will look at a bisexual man and be like, that's hot.
Well, and I think it's this idea
I
would as well.
But I know what you mean because then they think like, oh, it's like, well, they're not masculine enough. I'm like, listen, bitch, I bet they're going to put it down if you give them the opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it's this idea of what, we kind of talked about, like with women who are bisexual, is that it's either that you're really actually a lesbian or that you're doing it to get attention from men. And I think that's probably one of the most common things, especially for very femme-presenting bisexuals, is they're just doing it for attention from men. And I think it's actually the opposite for men, which makes things complicated for them in a different way, is that I think the stigma for bisexual men is that they are actually gay and they just don't want to accept that about themselves for whatever reason. And I think that's so unfair that it's so much more acceptable and palatable for women to be bisexual than it is for men, because everyone just assumes that you have a preference for men. But I think that actually is another point that is really interesting to me that I've read about, is this idea that it's always a preference for men. Whether you're a bisexual man, it's obvious that your true preference is for men. If you're a bisexual woman, then it's obvious that your true preference is actually for men. And it's this idea of this, like, as a society, we're so men-centric that we question people's sexuality because we think truly deep down, everyone is actually only attracted to men.
That's such a good point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so true, honestly. And it's so crazy too, because this probably isn't the episode for it, but I will say it's like there is such a large part of our society that they are terrible examples of what it means to be a good man. It almost turns your stomach when it's like the patriarchy and the massive preference towards a man, because it's like, oh, well, God forbid, be attracted to anyone else other than a man. And then you have these boys and these teenagers and these men who have grown up not actually having a good example of what it means to be a man. They don't get to look around and look at someone who's a positive masculine figure, because we have people running the country who are the worst example of a masculine man that you could possibly find on the face of the planet. And so, I mean, not to have an opposing view, because it's like both are true.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
100%.
And I just want to say this. Sorry, and I'm just like going back to this moment, but like if you're a bisexual man and you need someone to talk to, email us, call us up, and we will literally be your biggest fan.
Also, she's single.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Anna is single. But you deserve a safe place as well. And you deserve to be able to be a man and be masculine and be all the things that you want to be and be able to be who you are. And sexuality doesn't have anything to do with masculinity.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I'm going to hang up that phone now. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was looking because it like glitched for a second. But I think
it's probably feeling my passion.
I know. Really is. Yeah. I'm feeling it too. No,
if we ever have a little boy, my God. Or a little girl. I mean, honestly, either one. But I'm just saying, if we have a little boy, watch me fight for him, especially in today's society. And if we have a little girl, watch me fight for her. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Back to the subject.
I have a thought that's like on the topic, but slightly off. That is, so just to like be a little vulnerable. For me as a bisexual woman, I have, been in a relationship, married to a woman for the last 5 or 6 years. And I have a little bit of a fear of, if I in the future date or am with a man, will just be stripped of my queer identity.
Oh yeah. I think that's common. I think a lot of people think that.
So it's actually really tough to, at this point, it's kind of this weird niche moment for me, at least, that I have been much more accepted into the queer community because I was with a woman, and my sexuality and who I am hasn't changed a bit, but I am worried that I might lose part of my community if in the future I'm with a man, even though I actually haven't changed one bit.
Right? Yeah, I totally get that.
I think that's a common fear. Well, I think that's kind of similar to, I've seen at least people say, sometimes people are already married and then they realize that they're bisexual or whatever. And they make it, they don't act like we've all talked about. Again, these are faithful people, but they just are comfortable saying it. And people are like, well, why does that matter now? And it's like, well, it's still your identity. Like, what do you mean? And I think that just goes back, and I'm sure that you will, because even from what we've already talked about, I mean, you're vetting everyone moving forward, like on your value system. It's just open communication, like just finding a partner that sees you and values you and really understands, like, that wasn't a stepping stone. It wasn't a fluke. It was just a marriage that didn't work out, but it had nothing to do with, the gender of its participants.
I think also someone as a partner, if it is a man, that is a ally of the queer community as well. 100%. You are the queer community. Yeah. He has to be an ally. Otherwise, he doesn't deserve to be with you.
I 100% agree. That's where I think, like, we were talking about, like, the value system of, like, when I'm ready to start kind of looking and all that, is that I want a partner who is going to love me and support me for who I am, and that is a queer person. And it's going to be really important to find someone who accepts that and, like, champions that, whether a man or a woman.
Yeah, 100%. I also think as the queer community, we have to do better.
Yeah, I agree.
We have to do better. We have to grow. We have to, and it's hard, right? Because being in the queer community it can be really, it's loving, it's kind. It can also like be really fearful of everything that's happening around you. And sometimes when you're afraid, you double down. And then anything that makes you afraid, like if, for example, you're in the queer community and there is a misunderstanding around bisexuality, right? If that makes you feel afraid because you don't understand it, you double down. It is... The only thing that I can say is that we have to figure out how to be safe with one another and remember that one of the main responsibilities, in my opinion, of being in the queer community is helping other queer people feel safe.
Yeah, 100%.
We don't get to say you're not queer enough.
Yeah, right. Or you don't fit my definition of queer.
Right, yeah. So we got to do better.
Yeah.
And people get to figure it out along the way. Like we talk about this all the time. Anna's always educating us on, terminology and stuff like that, which is obviously fantastic. We should know more about that. But sometimes it's like, at least I can speak for myself, I'm like almost overwhelmed. So because you're like, okay, am I this type of bisexual, or am I this type? Or like, am I this type of lesbian? Or am I, and it's like, oh my, and it's, sometimes like that's very protective, I think, of people to have a labeled identity, and that helps them put language to who they are, which I think is amazing and so important that we have those things. But I do think that there are other times where you're like, I just feel like I'm like floating at sea. Like, I'm like, okay, well, which one of you can understand?
Yeah, I think that is one of the things that is a like controversial topic in the queer communities. Like, there's so many labels, there's so many different things that nobody really knows everything all the time, because it's constantly changing and evolving. Like, even within the queer community, there's so much that I know I don't know. Like, just kind of learning as I go and learning about other people's identities. And it can be really overwhelming. It's like, do I need to know every single identity to value someone else though? No.
Yeah, exactly. I just need to be open to, if you identify that way and you're going to teach me about it, then my ears are open, and I
just
like
genuine curiosity. And I think the other thing that, we get hung up on this idea of like, oh, there's so many labels, what's the point? But I think it's really important to allow people to have those labels, because sometimes, like for me, I didn't have the language of bisexuality, which to me now is so like a generalized term that it's like obvious. But at the time growing up, I didn't have that language. And so I didn't know that that is something that I could be. And didn't understand that the feelings I was having for girls was normal and acceptable and was actual attraction and not just a girl crush type thing. So I think it's important to have these labels, not necessarily to like put people in a box of like, this is your label and that's what you have to stick with, but that we just have language around the such diversity of sexuality, so that for people who feel like, well, bisexuality doesn't really fit with how I feel about my sexuality, so maybe I'm in. And I think that's where having language for all these different ways of having sexuality is important, because it offers validation to people.
Yeah, no, I agree for sure.
Yeah, I definitely think it can, for sure. And I, when I look at it, I feel like coming from a little bit of a place of simplicity or maybe privilege, because I'm like, I like women, I'm gay. It's pretty simple, straightforward, although very hard to get to. I'm obviously as big of a fan, like I am in huge support of the queer community. I am in support of really each individual doing what they need to feel valued, to feel validated, to do all of the things. I will say from my perspective, it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming that there are so many different labels and that it's ever evolving. But at the same time, well, I'll say this too. I don't know how much you guys know about the Enneagram. I'm also an Enneagram 4. Part of the main driver of Enneagram 4 is you want to be unique and you do not like put in boxes, and you really don't really like labels. So I'm coming at it from that angle too. Like I wish that people, in my perfect world, I wish that people felt like they could just be whatever they wanted without having to create another box, without having to create another label. Like if we were through community and through relationship, you learn about the people's preferences. Like it would be just as easy for someone to say, I like men and women, but I think it's more likely I'm going to end up with a man. That's your definition of bisexuality, essentially, Anna's version. And I wish that people could walk into a room and automatically feel safer, because sometimes I do think that a part of the ever evolving labels and all of that stuff is because we are seeking validation in a world that doesn't naturally give it to us and doesn't naturally celebrate us. And that's when I look at that, that's really the only thing I mean. And because there's always going to be the crossover point where maybe once we get to a society that celebrates us and fully accept us, will we still need the labels and need all the things? Yeah. I don't know, but that's really the world that I want.
Yeah. Agreed.
That's the world I want.
I think that's the tough thing about, like, I see the value in labels, and like having those like categories and differentiation and definitions is helpful, I think, to a lot of people in our current society. But at the same time, I also I wish that we didn't have to put a label and put people in a box of like, this is what you are, and this is what you call yourself. And if that changes, that's a problem, because the ideal society is that we don't have to put a name on it to accept it. We just are who we are. And you learn people and meet people and learn who they are from them and not from their label.
Yeah, exactly. When that's what, like, when you talk about sexuality as a scale, as a sliding scale, or as a spectrum, like, if people truly accepted that version of sexuality, I don't know that you would need the labels.
I just wanted to kind of go back to a comment that you made, because I think we should just reiterate that for everyone, really, and ourselves, like, where you were saying that support doesn't require a full understanding of each and every label. And I think, you know, babe, because we talk about this a lot, specifically since we've been doing the podcast, is like how important allyship is and serving our community and all that stuff. And it's like a lot of pressure when I feel like I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know. I probably know a fifth of the things. Like, what if I call someone the wrong thing? Or what if I do something and then I'm like disrespecting our own community? And it's so much pressure, but it's not that. And I feel like sometimes people, you know, we've spoken to our friends or family, like, who are not members of the queer community, and although big allies, like, they've expressed that as well, where they're like, well, I just don't get it. Like, I just don't understand X, Y, and Z, or like, I can't keep up with this. And I think that sometimes turns people off from being able to have conversation, because they're also feeling like, you know, if I say the wrong thing, it's going to be disrespectful, or if I don't understand this. But it's really just coming to the table with open ears and an open heart and learning.
100%.
You know, I'm not going to project my label. Like, I would never assume someone's sexuality. I'm not going to project my label onto you. I'm going to listen to you and get to know you. You're going to tell me. And in that conversation, I'm going to learn, is there a label that may or may not be new that's important to you? Or maybe you don't need one, you know? But as long as you're just, I think, open-minded to all of that.
Definitely.
And valuing the person for their individuality.
Exactly. Hopefully kind of some of the pressure of misunderstanding can be let down.
That's such a good point, babe. I think you've actually brought this up to me quite a bit, where when we're meeting new people, you always ask, what is your partner's name? Because it allows, even in, it's like those small things, just to kind of help the straight community out here for a second, even in those small things, it does not make an assumption. By asking someone what their partner's name is, it allows the other person to say, my husband is X. My wife is X. My partner is whoever. You know what I mean? It opens it up. And it's like, even some of those simple things, let's start there instead of making a generality.
I can't tell you how many times, like, when I was married to my ex-wife, that someone at some point meeting someone new and they say, oh, well, what's your husband's name?
Oh, yeah.
And it just...
She gets asked that all the time.
It adds this element of awkwardness of like, okay, now I have to correct you.
Right.
And then that's going to make you uncomfortable because you said something wrong.
Yeah. And you're like, you probably aren't always coming. Sometimes people are, but I'm like, you may not even be coming from a place of malice. You're just looking at us who are really feminine presenting, and you're like, oh, society tells me they're straight. So then you're like, I always feel this way, like what you're saying, like, I don't want to really, I feel uncomfortable correcting you because I don't want you to feel wronged, but it's also kind of disrespectful to my life and my wife if I just like ignore, like, obviously I'm not going to be like, oh, his name's Joe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, passing.
It creates this awkwardness.
Yeah.
For us and for the person who makes that error.
It's funny because people do not ask me that. I can't remember.
I wonder why.
But they do. This is you. Yes, probably. But this is what people say to me. Is your? They don't know. It's like they just stutter through the question.
And they don't know how to ask it.
Yeah.
Right.
Or sometimes I get ahead of it. I think people I work with, or if you're around me a lot, especially in professional settings, they kind of giggle at me. I think I talk about my spouse more than anyone.
Because you want
there.
to. Like, let me.
Yeah, and so I'm always like, yes, my wife. It's just like, let me just clear it up for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really uncomfortable. That I feel that way, especially like at work, like if it's my clients, I'm like, oh my God, I want to make you feel bad, but I'm like, this is like, you know, they'll be like, oh, your husband did such a great job on your ring. I'm like,
my husband, Natalie. Oh.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, she did. And then, you know, when I've had them be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, you know, we shouldn't assume, like, we're so old school. I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, you don't need to say sorry. Yeah. I just need to. I'm going to be working with you for 5 years on this project, so I don't want you asking about my husband next week. And, you know, like, we need to just get out of it right now.
I think that brings a really, really interesting light to the idea that people make queerness their personality. Because I think we try sometimes to get ahead of that moment and those awkward moments. And I don't want to have to explain that I'm not married to a man, but I am attracted to men. Like, I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah. And literally, I'm buying a sandwich from you.
We're at work, like, we're just chatting, like, need to correct this, but not make it weird. And so I think we do try to get ahead of those awkward moments by making it clear from the start, I'm gay, or I'm bisexual, or I'm married to a woman. And And I think that can be perceived the opposite way of like, well, you just have to make it so clear to everybody that you're gay and you're different. And
or it's like, if you're a vegan, you only talk about being vegan.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, why don't we offer me a fucking steak? So yeah, I'm going to get ahead of it.
Yeah. And so I think that there's an element of like, we almost kind of have to make it part of our personality, so to speak, because you want to get ahead of those awkward conversations and those assumptions so that people aren't coming to you making assumptions and having awkward conversations.
Yeah. That on top of, I mean, like for me, it's like, I personally don't think that I make like being gay part of my personality. It is part of who I am. It is part of my life. And I have literally, been on the brink of death to fight for the privilege and the right, the basic human right to be who I am. So there's like an element of that I'm like, I honestly don't give two shits if you think it's part of my personality.
Yeah.
You didn't fight for what I had to fight for. So really, it's no one really cares what you have to say about it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's when I say like it's about people make it about the personality, is that it's not actually the case. It's just that it's something that's important to us. It's something that we've had to fight for and like encountered adversity for, and also want to avoid these awkward conversations and avoid the assumptions, and are just very comfortable with, just as much as heterosexual people are comfortable talking about being attracted to, like men are attracted to women. And that's such a natural conversation to have in public spaces that it's so accepted. But I think because the queer community is not as socially accepted, when we talk about a woman being attracted to a woman, makes people uncomfortable and it's outside of the norm. And so that's where I think a lot of times the straight community attributes us making it part of our personality, when for us it's just part of our daily lives.
For sure. I also think there's this other far side of that I want to touch on a little bit, because I have had friends around me who are part of the queer community. There is an element that they often do feel like someone is out to get them. There is an element that they feel unsafe in situations that I would not deem unsafe. They, Brene Brown always talks about, don't walk around in the world looking for someone to tell you that you don't belong, because you will find it.
Yeah.
But if you walk through the world looking for belonging, you'll also find that. And I think that is such an incredibly powerful thing for the queer community, for straight, the community, for humans in general. Because if you've grown up queer, you probably have been in situations that are deeply unsafe, and you have had to fight, even internally. You've had to move through your own internal battles against homophobia and all of the things. But it does really, still to this day, it breaks my heart when I see people, even my age, who live in the same type of environment that I live in and are deeply afraid. And I think sometimes it's a little bit more that sometimes when people say they make being gay their whole personality, I think it can mean a lot of different things, but I think this is a small portion of it. And I could see from someone else's perspective why, because it's almost like any conversation they show up to fight.
Yeah.
And because they're in this flight or fight mode.
Yeah.
And they can't get themselves out of it. And it's hard to even talk about some of this stuff because there's like so many things that are true at the same time. Could it be true that queer people are not safe to this day? Yes, actually. 100%. Trans people are getting murdered. Kids are being bullied, all of the things. But then I think also if you are in the queer community and you literally walk around looking for a message that says you don't belong, you're also going to find it. And it's like we have to pivot. We have to look for belonging because we will find it. And so I also just wanted to touch on that a little bit because I do think that sometimes that pops up and they're like, dude, what? Like, calm down.
Yeah.
And they don't understand. They don't understand what that person had to go through to be who they are today. And also that person needs some help.
Yeah.
That person needs help feeling safe.
Well, the tough thing is I think there's so much trauma behind it that it's really hard to get out of that place without a lot of help and therapy and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like the fear gets like deeply rooted and it's almost this hypervigilance, I think, is you've experienced this trauma enough times that your body wants to avoid that trauma again. And so it stays hyper vigilant, watching out for it. And that's where I think people are not, you're not consciously looking for not being accepted or consciously looking for someone to hate you, but your subconscious is being hyper vigilant to avoid that type of situation again. And so it's easy to pick out the small things that might say that you don't belong.
It's so true. It's so true.
I don't really have anything deep to add there, but I feel like before we wrap up, I have a very important question for Anna to discuss.
Okay.
Anna, who was your bisexual awakening?
Oh my gosh. Alicia Silverstone.
What?
100%.
I did not see that coming at all.
Let me make sure I have the name right. We're talking about
From Clueless?
From Clueless.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
truthfully, it was a bag.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see that.
Oh,
Oh, I see that. Okay, I love it.
100%. That
I
was
love it.
my bisexual awakening.
Honey, who was yours?
Everyone already knows. My girl, the new bride-to-be, Demi Lovato.
Thank you, Demi.
Demi's
I'll be
hot.
forever thankful for you.
I don't understand how there are straight women looking at her and remaining straight.
Right?
Jesus.
Women are gorgeous.
But I do have to say I liked how, I mean, you're, similar. Light eyes, dark hair, big booty.
Demi, if you ever watch this, I'm sorry. You are much hotter than I am.
No, stop. But we do thank you for our marriage.
Yeah. Yes, we do. And thank you guys for being so vulnerable and talking through everything and helping people understand better.
Yeah, it's fun. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, you guys want to get some lunch?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Thanks for
Starving.
listening, you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.